Welcome to FineScale Modeler Weekly.
Hi all, we've got a packed show for you, starting with a look at some new products.
Apaches have been popular as of late, and both Meng and Takom have created 1/35th scale versions of the later AH64D and AH64E versions.
Trumpeter has gotten in on the action with a 1/35th scale early AH64A Apache.
The long fuselage halves are marked with recessed panel lines and rivets, and the frames for the cockpit glass are included. The separate sponsons feature avionics bays designed to be posed open. The same is true for both engines, with pretty complete detail behind doors to be posed open.
The two-place cockpit tub has molded console controls and gets a separate quilted back wall, nice instrument panels, seats, and controls. The clear parts fit from outside with the hinged starboard doors designed to be posed open. Masks are given to paint those parts. The main rotor blades have long tapered pins, which when trapped by the center halves should align perfectly. Nicely molded brackets and struts finish the head. The tail rotor looks just as good.
The chain gun under the chin builds from many small parts, providing good detail. The same is true of the targeting optics in the nose, the Hellfire missiles, and rocket pods for the pylons on the stub wings. Vinyl tires are provided for the detailed wheels.
Decals provide cockpit details, stencils, and markings for two unidentified U.S. Army Apaches, one with a cool shark mouth.
Despite its size, this looks like a relatively straightforward build in the box.
Near the end of last season, we took a look at two brand new 1/35th scale Tiger 1s from Takom.
Yep, that's right, and as usual, you can see the video preview for that, as well as the workbench review for one of those in the link in the description.
We mentioned that because now Takom is back with another pair of Tiger 1s.
Starting with the Michael Whittmann's Tiger in Normandy, 1944.
As to be expected, it shares many parts with the previous kits, including the steel road wheels, Lincoln-length tracks, multi-part hull with good surface detail, some interior, metal barrel, and photo-etched grills. Decals supply markings for 4 tanks from the 101st SS Heavy Tank Battalion in Normandy in 1944 in a variety of camouflage patterns.
The other newly released Tiger is an early production model with Simmerit from Group Furman. The parts have the same level of detail, with some differences to account for production changes. The decals supply markings for a pair of Tigers, one from Group Furman in Germany in spring 1944, another from the 506th Heavy Tank Battalion in the Ardennes in 1945.
If you're into Tigers, and we know a lot of you are, you'll want these in your collection.
Next, we have a pair of Pacific Profiles books by Michael John Claringbould.
Starting with Volume 13, covering Imperial Japanese Navy bombers, transports, flying boats, and miscellaneous types in the South Pacific, 1942 to 44. The 132-page softcover opens with a good technical description of IJN aircraft and markings, and then it details unit by unit the markings, in profiles, and photos.
Volume 14 covers B-25 bombers in Australia, New Guinea, and the Solomons from 1942 to 1945. The softcover's 136 pages are jammed with technical details, and then a unit-by-unit detail of Dutch, American, and Australian Mitchells in photos and lovely profiles.
Finally, we have the welcome return of Minicraft's 1:144 scale KC-135R.
Here's the Academy release of the nice kit of the U.S. Air Force refueler.
The fuselage halves have recessed panel lines and raised reinforcement strips around the rear third. The wings have similar surface detail and interlock in the fuselage for dihedral. The landing gear looks good, especially for the scale, as does the refueling boom. The larger-bodied CFM engines feature single-part intake lips, fans with sleeves, and good-looking rears. The sprues also supply the wingtip droge refuelers.
The decals provide markings for a pair of American aircraft. One from the 22nd Air Refueling Wing at McConnell Air Force Base in 2013, and an Illinois Air National Guard tanker in 2005.
You can see our workbench review of the initial Minicraft KC-135E kit at the link in the description. It is really good to see this back on shelves.
And to look for a review of the Apache at FineScale.com.
FineScale Modeler Weekly, brought to you by HobbyZone USA, your source for hobby storage solutions, hard-to-find hobby tools, and aftermarket modeling needs.
Sanding resin. Some of you guys have been asking me what I use at my workbench for sanding resin. So, just to start off, Obviously, we know that sanding resin creates, well, tiny little particles. The thing about resin particles is that they are super fine and they can cause respiratory irritation. And maybe, if you breathe enough of it, some long-term health effects. We want to avoid those things. So, the first thing that I always caution people whenever they're talking about sanding resin is to get yourselves either a dust mask, just go to your local hardware store and you can pick up a package of those, or a respirator that has filters that are rated for dust particles and not just organic vapors. So that's the first thing that I recommend. You could also use a shop vac in conjunction with the mask. You can bring the shop vac up, tape or clamp the hose onto your workbench, and then do your sanding near it and have some of that dust just collected right down into the shop vac. If you go that route, make sure you get a dust bag for your filter inside the shop vac because, again, that dust is super fine. And just with the sponge filter that's usually in the shop vac, it'll actually infiltrate into your motor and it could burn it out. So you want to protect your shop vac from, well, basically the same kind of stuff that would affect your lungs. The other option that you can use is wet sanding. For that, you'll need your resin parts, obviously. You'll need your wet dry sandpaper or sanding pads or sanding sticks. These are from Green Stuff World and are both wet and dry sanding sticks. And then of course you're going to need your water. To wet sand, really there's nothing tricky, there's nothing special about it. What you're going to do is you're going to get your part wet. You're going to also get your sanding pad, your sanding stick down in there, and then you're just going to sand. Now, what this does is it minimizes your dust. That's all it's going to do, is minimize the dust. And I'm just going to go around this edge here and get this edge nice and cleaned up. It's a bit, how should we say, it's a bit rough, right? It's a bit rough. And so I'm using 180 grit just to really work that. Now what you're going to see, you're going to start noticing, is that it's creating a slurry. You can see that, right? Here, so it's keeping that dust wet so that it's not flying up into the air. And otherwise you just do the work like you normally would. Go back to your water, rinse, clean out the particles out of your sanding stick or sandpaper, and double check your work, and then just do what it is that you need to do. And you can see that you can see those particles are starting to collect down in the water there. But, as you can tell, we are not getting a bunch of dust flying around in the air, and that's a good thing. So you can see that. Now I've just gone around the edge of that, and I've cleaned all of that up. You know, I could come in here, do the same thing. If you have body work, same sort of deal. I'll use a finer grit, but you can get your body down in there. And let's say there was a part on here where I was looking at, it was just a little bit. Now, if I were doing this dry, I'd be creating all sorts of dust by now. But by doing this with this wet sanding, I'm keeping things pretty clean, cleanish, right? So there you go. Nothing magical about doing this technique. It can be a little bit messy. As you can see, I've got wet hands. So you're going to want to have a towel or a paper towel nearby for you to dry off. And you can see in there now, you can see how cloudy that water has gotten because there are resin particles in there. So the next thing then is how to dispose of this water that has the resin particles in there. I would suggest not just going to the sink and dumping it down the sink. Instead of doing that, go ahead and get yourself a paper coffee filter. Then pour the water through the paper coffee filter and try to collect as much of that resin residue as possible in the coffee filter, and then you can dispose of that. That's what I do when I'm sanding resin at my workbench.
Do you like what you see here and want more? Subscribe to FineScale Modeler magazine. You'll get 6 issues a year crammed with how-to stories from some of the best modelers around the world. Go to finescale.com/YouTube for a special offer for YouTube viewers like you.
We've gotten a lot of questions about the kits and the kit choices that show up in the first section, the top of the FineScale Modeler Weekly show. That section, which we still call, we call it the new product rundown. Those kits are sent to us by manufacturers from all over the world, and we do our best with all the kits that we get in for review to feature them in some sort of video and then make sure that they get reviewed. Now, can we review everything? No, but we do our best to get them out there and get the information to you. Now, with that said, there are some kits that just people don't like. And in particular, they will come out and there's a group that doesn't like models of Axis vehicles. And to that I say, there is a substantial part of the modeling community that likes to model Axis vehicles. World War II, German, Italian, Japanese, they like to build those models. You don't have to like it, and you don't have to build them.
Nope, no one's telling you have to build it. We have so many choices in modeling. You can build all the Shermans you want. You can build all the Churchills you want. Whatever you like.
Right. It is a popular segment of the modeling community. It just is. With that said, I mean, companies produce because they know it is a popular segment. They produce and continue to produce those vehicles.
Right. There's as a slightly different example, if you wonder why we featured, I'm going to say 8 or 10 F-35s in the last 18 months, it's not because I particularly like the F-35. In fact, I've made no secret of my
Although
distaste. I built one.
Is it 2?
No, just one.
Just one?
Just one.
You sure?
Yeah, yeah.
You sure you didn't do one like a closet build of an F-35?
No.
Are you?
No,
you sure?
no, absolutely,
Okay,
absolutely.
all right.
I have built my one and only F-35 that I'm going to build. Lies, deceptions. Anyway, it's because model companies keep producing F-35 kits. It's the latest fighter. It's used by a lot of different countries. It's a popular modeling subject. Now, we just keep featuring them because people keep sending us new toolkits of them.
Not only is it because the companies send us those kits and we feel an obligation that we should use them, but also because you, viewers and our readers, want to see them, right? Want to see what the difference is. What makes this F-35 in 1/72nd scale different from that F-35 one, or in 1/48 scale, or 1/32nd scale?
Yeah, we're getting all of them in 1/32nd
right.
now.
So you want to see the differences, and maybe you would rather build this one over that one. It's the same thing with the Axis ones, and actually it's not just Axis. I mean, Russian. It hits a number of different things. We've heard complaints that we've got cars or Gundam or whatever. But the thing is this: the companies send us these things, and we want to make sure that we get that information out there for you. And frankly, we're just excited to see new kits
Right.
and see the technology that's being used to produce these kits, and we're just happy that kits continue to be made.
And what the manufacturers are producing and sending us is a reflection of what modelers are looking for.
Right,
So, I mean,
yeah.
they're not going to be producing F-35 kits if no one's building F-35 kits or Gundam kits or
Right.
P-51 Mustang kits or whatever it happens to be.
So bear with us. As always, we're sure that there's going to be something of interest that is going to come through the FSM pipeline, and we'll get it to you as soon as we can. But that is just a little bit of behind the scenes on how we decide and what we include in the first segment of every FineScale Modeler Weekly.
So on that note, we'll see you guys next time.
Bye.
The Hellfire. I feel like I was missing something, but was I not? Or
Near the end of last season, we took a pair.
took a pair.
Ah! And good-looking rears. These CFM engines are getting some action on Tinder tonight, I'm telling you what.
Now I'm just gonna say thank you. Anyway, that's what I'm thinking. I'll just do it again. Pads. Your sanding pad. Sanding pad. Sanding pad. Sometimes I really hate when the Wisconsin accent comes through. All right. Now you just shut everything off. Good job. We got it figured out.